I'm trying to get harder and tougher mentally and physically every day of my life.
So you're either the growth mindset or you're the fixed mindset.
If you're trying to be the best, you need to look at who the best is and see what they do.
Relentless pursuit of progress.
There's a difference between the best and the rest.
Welcome to the Brute Strength Podcast.
Champions are built in the mind first.
Where we interview scientists, world champions, doctors, and experts in just about every area of health and fitness.
What do you care enough about? What are you fascinated enough about to go so deep and learn so much that you'll know more about it than anyone else?
And now, here's your host, Michael Cazayoux.
Hey, this is Michael Cazayoux, and today I'm talking to John Assaraf. John is a serial entrepreneur that's built 5 multi-million-dollar companies, including one that made over $4 billion with a B dollars a year. He's a multiple New York Times bestselling author of the books The Answer and Having It All, and he's one of the biggest behavior and mindset experts in the world. He's been focused on neuroscience for many years, and he currently owns a company called NeuroGym and has a new book out called Innercise. He's been featured in 8 movies, including Quest for Success with Richard Branson and the Dalai Lama. He's been in the movie The Secret, which focuses on the law of attraction. He's been featured on the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and CNN, and has been interviewed by people like Ellen, Larry King, and Anderson Cooper. This dude has literally done it all. In this episode, we talk about how to change your beliefs, the neuroscience behind our thinking and how we can change it. And we spend most of the episode talking about goal achievement. And he breaks goal achievement out into 3 different things: setting goals, making plans, and executing those plans. So we talk about how to set better goals, how to create better plans, and how to discipline yourself to actually follow your plans. Talking to John felt like what I would imagine it would feel like to talk to Tony Robbins. He's just incredibly inspiring and passionate in everything that he talks about. This episode is loaded with tips and exercises for you to try out immediately. This was an honor for me to do and such a pleasure. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming John Assaraf. John, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome. It's great to be with you.
It is such an honor to be here, man. I remember I was 14 years old, and I had started going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings because I was an alcoholic and drug addict as a teenager. And this older man took an interest in helping me, and he brought me over to his house, and he didn't give me candy, but he put me in front of the movie The Secret. Oh, wow. And it had a profound impact in my my beliefs about what goes on in our heads and our abilities to influence the outcomes in our lives. And so it's such an honor to be here with you today. For those of you who don't know, John plays a role in the movie The Secret, which is all about the law of attraction. And so, yeah, it's coming full circle, man. It's so great to be here with you. So I want to talk a lot about beliefs and how we can change them. And I think the best place to start is with your upbringing. Can you talk a little bit about your upbringing with your family and specifically with your relationship with your dad?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when we get into the world of beliefs, I think everybody knows that beliefs are really what drive behaviors more than anything else. When I was growing up as a kid, earlier before the show, you and I talked, I was born in Tel Aviv, Israel, and my parents decided they didn't want to raise their kids, my brother and sister and I, in a war-torn area where there was always the fear of war. And so we moved to Montreal, Canada, and I was just finishing kindergarten and was thrown into a class in Montreal of about 55 other kids. And I didn't speak English and I didn't speak French, and those were the 2 languages that everybody spoke there. And so they couldn't give me any special attention. And so basically I wasted, time looking at the ceilings and bugging other kids. And I fell behind. By about 2 years, I fell behind. And I developed this, and I didn't realize it at the time, right? I'm telling you all of this in retrospect. I didn't feel like I was as smart as the other kids because I just couldn't communicate and I couldn't get my thoughts across and I couldn't answer anything. And my parents couldn't help me either because they were learning how to speak English as well, and they already knew how to speak French, so that helped them a little bit because Montreal is a French-speaking province. But quickly, I fell behind all the other kids. I was in remedial classes for everything for years. And I started to get into a lot of trouble in school. And I just developed this self-image of I'm not as smart as all the other kids. And that went on for years and years and years. And I struggled in school. I was in the principal's office all the time. And by the time I was 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, I started to hang out with a group of kids that were adept at shoplifting. And we started doing breaking and entries. By the time I was 15, I was into doing a lot of drugs and drinking alcohol and doing breaking and entries and bringing in drugs from Florida. And that's what I thought I was going to do for my life because I didn't fit in anywhere else. And got into an enormous amount of trouble. I mean, more trouble than, most kids would get into in 10 lifetimes. So that was really my life as a younger kid. The only thing that offset that was that I was athletically pretty inclined. And so I was really good at track and field in school. I was a basketball star in school. And even though I was in a small little school in Montreal, I was the big man on campus in some sports. So I had this contradiction going on in my head between one part of my life I'm getting praised for and accolades for, and the other part of my life I'm considered, the dumbest jock in the room. And so I'm getting this reinforcement of he may be a good jock, but man, is he stupid. So that was really, from, 6 years old to 16, 17 years old. And so I just had an unhealthy self-image of myself, even though I had a loving, caring family. My, father worked hard, mother worked hard. Even though they didn't get along, they loved their kids, and they always had food on the table and clothes on our back, and shelter over our head. So it wasn't like my home life was miserable. It was my inner world that was highly confused and chaotic and felt like I just didn't fit in, other than sports, and more sports. So that was my early years. And, you started off saying that, this man took you in and didn't give you candies. This one meeting that I had when I was 19 years old transformed my life. And earlier you asked me to share something about my dad as well. My father went to grade 5 and basically had to go and work to help his family support, his mother specifically support the family when his father died when he was a very young man. And my father was a bit of a brute. He wasn't a really good communicator. He communicated with his feet, his legs, and his fists. And so he would get angry and beat me more than anybody in my family because I was getting into the most amount of trouble. And today he'd be put in jail. But back then, beating a child was trying to beat the child into behaving properly. So he didn't do it out of being malicious. He did it because that's what his father did to him to get him to comply. So I learned that later on, of course, but I thought I was bad. I was bad, therefore I got beaten. I just kept being bad. I don't know why, but maybe it was a way for me to get more attention from him.
You're right.
A little reverse psychology on my part and painful psychology. But my life really changed when I had this wonderful, amazing, serendipitous encounter with a man who was a very successful entrepreneur, happily married, wonderful father, philanthropist. And my brother had arranged for a meeting with him. My brother was worried that I was going to go to jail. And so he said, hey, why don't you come and visit me in Toronto, Canada, which was 350 miles from where I lived in Montreal at the time. And so I took the train to go and meet my brother. And he arranged for a meeting with this man by the name of Alan Brown. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing here type of thing? But I'm going to go see my brother anyway. And in one lunch with one meeting, one question, one answer, my life changed. And so at this lunch, Mr. Brown was very, very, very sweet and kind. And he asked me, he says, like, what are your goals? What's your vision for your life? I'm like, well, what do you mean? What's my goals? What's my vision for my life? I never thought about a vision for my life. And my only goals was to make enough money to be able to go get some alcohol, maybe buy some drugs, have some fun at the restaurants and bars, get a car, maybe move in on my own. And like, what else is there? Mm-hmm. That was about the limitation of my ignorance at the time. And he said, listen, he said, you're capable of achieving so much more than that. He said, why do you think you're doing the things that you're doing? I said, well, I'm doing it to make money. I'm doing it to have some money in my pocket so I can have some fun and have, a life that, I can enjoy. And he said, well, there's other ways to do that. And what was really interesting is as we talked a little bit, he realized, and he said to me, he says, you have some really challenging beliefs about yourself, and you have some really challenging beliefs about what is possible and what it takes to achieve goals, to have a better life. I said, well, okay, what should I do about it? He said, well, the first thing, I want you to do is I want you to set some goals for your life. And so I said, well, how do I do that? And he gave me these documents. It was like 1980. It was April of 1980. And you'll understand in a minute why I remember that date so much. You weren't even born, right?
Correct.
I was 19 years old, April 1980. And he said, here's this 1980 goal setting guide. And so the goal setting guide says, okay, where would you like to be in 5 years, in 3 years, in 1 year, in 180 days, in 90 days? I'm like, 5 years, and I don't know where the fuck I'm going to be in a week from now. But I wrote out this stuff. Okay, I want to retire by the time I'm 45 with $3 million. I want to drive a Mercedes-Benz car. I want to have my own house. I want to travel the world first class. I want to retire my parents. And I just spewed out ideas that I had in my head. And then I gave it back to him about 45 minutes later while he was talking to my brother. And he looked at it, he says, you've got some pretty good goals. These are some really good goals. He said, I want to ask you a question that's going to determine whether you actually will ever achieve these goals that you have. I go, sure, ask me any question you want. And he says to me, and he leaned forward. I remember he leaned forward and he lowered his voice. He says, John, he says, are you interested in achieving these goals or are you committed? And I said, what? He says, are you interested in achieving these goals or are you committed? And I looked at him. I said, Mr. Brown, I said, what's the difference? He goes, son, he says, if you're interested, you'll do what's easy and convenient. If you're interested, you'll allow your present circumstances and your habits and your beliefs to control what you do, and you'll just keep repeating the same things over and over again, and you'll be a victim of your past and your present circumstances. But if you're committed, it says you'll upgrade your knowledge, you'll upgrade your skills, you'll change your beliefs, you'll develop the habits of the person who can achieve every one of those goals and dreams. So, son, are you interested or are you committed? And I'm like, wow, that makes total sense. Even though I didn't know some of what he was talking about, I said, it made sense. I said, well, Mr. Brown, I'm committed. And he goes, good. In that case, and he reached his hand out to me. He says, I will be your mentor. I'm like, what? I reached my hand out and shook his hand. He says, good. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is move from Montreal to Toronto. I said, excuse me? What do you mean move from Montreal to Toronto? I live in Montreal. I work in Montreal. He says, John, I know where you live. I know where you work. He says, but are you interested or are you committed to having those goals and dreams? I said, I'm committed, but I don't have any money. I don't have a car. I can't move to Toronto. He says, John, look at how deeply ingrained your beliefs are. He said, first you make the decision. Then you figure out how. I said, fine. I'll move to Toronto. He says, good. And then my brother chimed in and says, well, bro, you can live with me for a bit until you get up on your feet. I go, great, but I don't have a car, Mark. He says, Johnny, he says, you can take me to work in the morning and just use my car as you need it and then pick me up. So in a very, very short period of time, it was like, okay, I'm moving to Toronto. Then Mr. Brown says to me, great, now what I need you to do is I need you to enroll in real estate school, and it starts on May the 5th. And I'm like, Mr. Brown, it's April. I don't like school. I hate school. They kicked me out. I flunked English, math, and just about every other class there is. I said, I do not do school. He said, John, here you go again. I said, what? Like, what, here I go again? He says, you're telling me why you can't or why you won't. You give me all of the reasons, the stories, the excuses of why you can't. I said, well, I don't like school. He says, and by the way, it's $500 to sign up for real estate class. I said, $500? I've got like $40 in my bank account. I don't have the money. And so you can see where this is going, right? I just kept giving him reasons and stories and excuses. And he pointed it out to me. I said, fine, I'll move to Toronto, I'll enroll in real estate school, and I'll figure out how to come up with the $500. And my brother chimed in again and says, hey, bro, I can lend you a couple $100, and maybe, your sister can, maybe dad can also. So long story short, I made these 2 decisions or 3 decisions. 1, I'm committed. 2, I'm going to move to Toronto. 3, I'm going to get into real estate, and I'll figure out where to get the money. I went back home, told my parents. 2 weeks later, took the train back. My father lent me some money. My sister lent me some money. I enrolled in real estate school on May 5th, 1980 was my first class. And on June 20th, I graduated at 19 years old with my real estate license. And you may be wondering, how do I remember these dates so well, being 58 now? So this is 40 years ago. And the answer is because on June the 20th, that was the beginning of me having a different belief system and me changing my self-image of who I am, because I passed the real estate test on my own without cheating.
Powerful, man. Powerful.
So that's the beginning of, where I came from. And then, he started to coach me, to train me, to show me different perspectives. He had me looking at my goals every single day. The ones that I wrote out, he had me review them every day. He had me read them out loud. He had me run my fingers across them, all right, as I was reading them. He had me close my eyes at my real estate desk where there's other real estate agents all over the office. And I closed my eyes and I visualized and I imagined and I created affirmations that were counter to the negative beliefs that I had. I learned how to emotionalize those affirmations and those beliefs and the achievement of the financial goals and health goals and relationship goals and career goals and the sales goals that I had. And in 12 months, I went from being this underachieving, low life, for the most part, kid without 2 nickels to rub together, and with low self-esteem and limiting beliefs that were so disempowering. I was doing illegal things to survive. And I made $31,000, which was $6,000 more than my father made as a cab driver. And the money was one side of it, but who I was becoming was the bigger gift, right? Is like, I did this without lying, stealing, cheating, or doing anything unethical. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know, I didn't believe that that was possible for me.
So this is such an important conversation for anyone listening to really tune into, because you might not be at risk for going to jail, but your beliefs are what are keeping you from reaching your next level of development. So I want to keep diving further into this.
Sure.
Our beliefs, I've read you or heard you say this somewhere, our beliefs build habits, and then those habits reinforce those beliefs. So if I have a hard time focusing, and every time I sit down to focus, I have this habit of getting up to pee, getting up to check my text and Instagram and email, I'm further reinforcing that belief that I can't focus. How do we hijack this system?
Sure. So I think before we go there, I think it's worth understanding that there isn't a human that's ever been born. There's been about 110 billion humans on Earth. There's not one out of those 110 billion that were born with any beliefs or any habits. Right? So the question is, if I wasn't born with any beliefs, any perspective, any habits, any emotions around things, what actually happened that caused me to develop beliefs or habits or perspectives? And so the first thing to understand, and this is why I wrote my latest book, Innercise, is the first thing to understand is we're born with obviously a brain. We're not even able to see when we're born. We learn how to see based on the incoming light that comes in through our eyes. We're able to hear, but our brain wires or creates neural networks or patterns that become reinforced. So if we start to hear our parents' beliefs or see our parents' beliefs in actions or our parents' behaviors and actions or their emotions and their beliefs and behaviors and actions, our brain creates these associations and neural networks that through repetition become fixed in our subconscious mind. So we can actually have two opposing beliefs. Let me give you an example. We can have a belief that it's really possible for me to achieve, let's say, $1 million in revenue. But there could be an opposing subconscious belief. The first one is called an explicit belief. The second one's called an implicit belief. If you have an implicit belief, okay, a subconscious belief that it's not possible for you because you're too young, too old, too Asian, too Caucasian, too male, too female, too trans, too gay. If you have opposing beliefs at the implicit level, your implicit beliefs will win. So what we need to understand is beliefs are nothing more and habits are nothing more than reinforced patterns in our brain that for the most part we accumulated and reinforced from our imprinting years, our modeling years, and our experiential years, okay, of development. And once these beliefs and patterns and habits are reinforced in the subconscious mind, behavior becomes automatic regardless of our conscious decision to change them. So first and foremost, you are not your beliefs. Your beliefs are not totally true. Your habits are empowering or disempowering you, constructive or destructive, positive or negative are not terms I like to use, but we have a variety of beliefs that empower us, a variety that don't, and the same with habits. So beliefs create behavior, behavior creates habits, and once we have this habit reinforced in our subconscious mind, then something called automaticity is what takes over in the brain, and we just repeat those patterns over and over and over again because the brain is wired to conserve energy. So when you don't understand the system of habits or the effects of how beliefs are created and their impact on our thoughts and on our behaviors, then you are a victim of beliefs or habits or perspective versus being in control and learning how to change them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So how do we, let's say we identify a destructive belief, maybe we're really interested in computer programming, but growing up, my mom always told me, you're just not good at math. And I know math is very important in programming. And so I just have this huge fear of failure in this endeavor. How can I go about rewiring that and hijacking that system?
Great. So the sentence that you just gave me, there are two different things at play here, right? So one is a belief that you're not good at math and therefore you can't learn how to program. So the belief is flawed, but we'll come back to that in a moment. And then the other is if you try and fail, now your self-image is going to be impacted. It's going to reinforce how you're not good at math and you're not smart enough. Mm-hmm. So let's divide limiting beliefs and fears into two different categories. So let's say we have a limiting belief that our mother, sister, brother, father, teacher, friend, or we developed on our own is somehow in our brain. So first and foremost, you are not the belief. The belief is just a piece of code. So first, let's have a different perspective on what is a belief. So there are several different ways to deal with a disempowering belief. Number one is to validate the truth behind it. So the first thing that I would do if I was working, let's say with you on that particular belief or anybody else, to say, is that really, really, really true? Do I have to be good at math to learn how to program? Are there people who are not good at math that program? And the answer is going to be yes or no. And here's what I can tell you. The answer is no. You don't have to be good at math to learn how to program. You need to learn how to program to be good at programming. So that's number one. So first is we validate the truthness of the belief. Number two, a simple brain trick to use is called an in the past frame. So let's say today we say, I want to check out, see if this belief is really true. And you go, okay, how do I do that? We do the little research I just suggested before, but then the next phase of it is when we think and we reinforce a belief that I have to be good at math to be a programmer, our brain says, okay, well, since you are not good at math, you're not going to be a good programmer. And that's the end of that sequence. But if you simply shifted your self-talk to this, in the past, I used to believe that I had to be good at math to be a programmer. And now, with the advancements of technologies, I'm learning that I don't have to be, and I could learn how to be a programmer. As soon as you just use that phraseology, that in the past frame with what we call as a future pace, and now I can, you just unlocked your brain from I can't, which basically puts the proverbial brakes on right there, to taking your foot off the brake and then moving to a forward movement towards how I can.
I love that.
So that is just, those are two simple techniques to use to get beliefs. And then a third technique is you take a polar opposite affirmation, right? An affirmation is nothing more than something that you write down, or an affirmation is nothing more than something that somebody gives you that says, I am learning how to be a really good programmer, and I'm enjoying it. And if you took that sentence and you repeated it daily and you emotionalized it and you backed it up with taking some little actions towards becoming a decent, good programmer, and then you did the work to build your confidence and your certainty and your skill, now you're reinforcing a brand new neural pattern. If you did that for 100 days, a little bit each day, it takes between 66 days and 365 days to create a new reinforced pattern that will override an old implicit subconscious pattern. Not 2 days, not 7 days, not 12, not 15, not 21, not 31, not 40, 50, or 60. 66 days minimum to develop a strong enough pattern to override the old pattern. Then the habit or pattern starts to drive your automatic behaviors versus you having to use willpower or persistence in order to do the habit.
So what about all of the beliefs that are unconscious? How do we excavate all of those, the ones that we don't even know are present that are holding us back?
Great question. So in a quiet, calm, relaxed state, our brain fluctuates between a variety of different brainwave frequencies, so beta, alpha, theta, delta, gamma. And in a quiet, mindfulness, meditative state that isn't the state that we're in right now, we can actually ask our subconscious a question. And we could just sit there quietly and say, hey, what subconscious beliefs are holding me back? And have a pad of paper next to you. And whatever percolates up into your head, just write it down without thought, without judgment, blame, shame, guilt, or justification. It's really important. Just observation. The greatest skill that we can have as humans is awareness of our thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations, and behaviors. And it's in this quiet, calm state that we can percolate up the answers that we need from our subconscious. So that's part one. Part two is if we don't come up with any, then we can still say, hey, I want to program a new belief into my subconscious mind that'll wipe out, erase. It's almost like a killer program. And it would go something like, regardless of what disempowering subconscious patterns I have, I'm rising way above them and I'm achieving my goals and dreams no matter what. That's like a master program to delete, distort any other program. Because if you really believe that, then it's really irrelevant what's in the subconscious. And if you're being aware and you're paying attention to your results, the results are nothing more than the effects of your thoughts, emotions, feelings, and behaviors. So if we look at results and the results don't match what it is that we want to achieve, then we can go back and take a look at, okay, are our beliefs in the way? Are fears in the way? Is self-image in the way? Or am I simply not applying the right strategies or tactics? There's only 4 things that are going to hold you back. There's not 30. Only one of those 4 things holds you back. So now, through observation and analysis, we can start saying, hey, my beliefs are actually really good. My ability to manage my emotions, specifically the one of fear, I'm really good at that. You know what? And I really believe that I deserve this, I can do this, I'm good enough, smart enough, and worthy enough. So I got those 3. So is it possible that my strategies are wrong? Is it possible just doing the wrong things even though I'm really active? So whenever we want to look at, success behavior, we have to look at those 4 things.
Let's talk a little bit about accomplishing goals. It's still early on in the year. Everybody's fired up about, visioning and creating goals. You break out the accomplishment of goals into 3 things: setting goals, creating a plan, and executing the plan. It seems to be that maybe most people, at least many people, one of the first things that really holds them back is setting clear goals. How do you think about, or how do you help people get clarity on what they want to accomplish?
Well, first I'd like to understand what is really preventing them from setting clear goals, right? So a lot of times, the work that I do in the neuroscience and neuropsychology field is looking at cause versus effect, right? So when somebody says to me, I don't have clearly set goals or goals in writing, I ask, how come? Like, before I go to here's what you need to do and why, like, how come? I want to hear the story. I want to hear the story they have been or they tell themselves. So first I want to uncover how come. So I want to understand that. So, and then it's going to come back to either fear of failure, self-image, or limiting beliefs. So it's going to come back to one of those 3 things. So I want to understand that first. But then I say, okay, what if I can explain to you why it's so critical from a neuroscience and neuropsychology perspective, why you have to create your vision, your goals, some plans and timelines. And they go, well, sure, if you can explain to me why I should do it, then I'll probably be more likely to do it. So number 1, when you choose a vision for what you want your life to be like sometime in the future, you're actually activating a part of your brain called the left prefrontal cortex, which is the Einstein part of your brain and the GPS part of your brain. And when you do that, you actually activate the nucleus accumbens in the insula, which releases dopamine that makes you actually feel good and excited. And so don't you want to be, excited and feel good about achieving goals and dreams? And they go, well, of course I do. I said, great, then why aren't you doing it? And then the next thing usually comes up is, well, what if I don't achieve it? Now we have fear. Now it's the emotion of fear that comes in, right? So I say, okay, so but let's understand how the brain works. So if you were the band leader, okay, you had a band, your favorite, guy band, girl band, combined band or orchestra, you'd have a conductor, you'd have probably a pianist, a guitar player, a vocalist. You probably have 3 or 4 or 5 people in your band, and everybody plays a little bit different or a different musical instrument. And when they play together, you have coherence, you have harmony, right? You have the members of the band playing together, and it sounds freaking great. I said, well, if you don't engage all the different members of your brain, the band, the orchestra, then you're dealing with only a few pieces of the puzzle. So the first part is to get clarity on your vision and your goals, and that activates that left prefrontal cortex. The next part is to develop some very easy to apply strategies of what can I do? What can I do to make more money? What can I do to start my blog? What can I do to start my business? What can I do? What you can do gives your brain some ideas of what you can do versus all the reasons of why you can't. So when you come up with what I can do, and then you come up with some tactics of how specifically, so let's say you want to make an extra $1,000 a month. You can say, okay, what I could do is sell some of the stuff that I'm not using in my house. I could find some products or services that people have that I can introduce to my friends or family. I could sell X, Y, or Z, right? So now you have what you can do, and now you have the specifics of the details of what you can do. I could put an ad, in online to sell them. I could do whatever it is. As soon as you start to engage the what part of your brain with the how part of your brain, and you engage the why part of your brain, like, why would I want to do this? Well, I want to do this because I'd build more confidence, more certainty. I'd have more money. I'd have more free time. I'd have more, skills that I can bring to the marketplace. So as soon as you go to the what, the how, and the why, now I've just activated the limbic emotional system of the brain, and now I'm firing on all cylinders from a neurological and psychological perspective. And then when I start to take small, little action steps that don't trigger my fear center of failing, but I just do some micro action steps to get started, now I've just activated the motor cortex of my brain. So now I've got left prefrontal cortex working. I've got motor cortex working. I've got motivational circuits activated. I've got imagination and creative circuits activated. Now I've got my whole brain working on how I can achieve my goal. And as soon as I start to take action, I start to build my confidence muscle, my certainty muscle, and I start to reinforce a positive, constructive, empowering neural network that if I just keep doing that a little bit each day for the next 30, 60, 90, 180 days, and so forth, now I have the patterns required to set goals and achieve goals. And setting goals is a conscious exercise. Achieving goals becomes a subconscious exercise. And when I create coherence in my brain, I create coherence and harmony in the results, and they match the vision and the goals that I have.
What do you mean by the conscious and subconscious? Setting goals is conscious and achieving is subconscious. What do you mean by that?
Great. So you use your conscious mind to choose what you want. And through repetition and taking action over and over and over again and repeating this process, any process that we repeat becomes automatic.
Becomes
all
subconscious.
All automatic processes become automatic. So if I set up the right process and I work that right process long enough to create the subconscious pattern, that's what you call as a habit.
Mm-hmm.
So when you asked earlier, if I sit down and I want to do some work, but then I get up and I do all these other things, well, that's a habit you've developed. But if you sat down and every time you wanted to get up to go and pee, you said, you know what? Hold on a second. I'm going to override that automatic thought to be distracted. Do that 100 times. Like, guess what? You interrupt that pattern and you don't do it anymore. So you choose consciously. You impress into the subconscious mind through repetition and emotion and a variety of other techniques. And then you create the habit, then the habit will create you.
So one of my favorite parts about how you describe accomplishing goals is that you say 75% of accomplishing goals is in the execution. So many people are talking about how to set better goals. There's SMART goals and a million other formulas. Relatively very few people are talking about the execution. It seems to me like the execution is mostly about discipline. What else is going on in the execution phase?
Well, before the execution phase, you have to develop the plan that's the right plan. So if you're, you remember the old adage, perfect or practice makes perfect?
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't. perfect practice makes perfect. Practice, if you practice the wrong things,
Right.
you just get really good at doing the wrong things automatically. And so the first thing to understand is, do I have the right strategies and tactics that will give me a predictable result? Now, some people that are listening right now may go, well, I don't know what the right strategies or tactics are to lose weight and keep the weight off. Losing weight is easy. Every diet works. Every exercise program should work for a period of time. But it's not losing weight that you want. Number one, you want to lose fat. And number two, for example, you want to create the habit so that you keep doing it, because most people have a goal to say, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Versus having a goal, say, I want to be incredibly healthy for the rest of my life, and part one is to lose 20 pounds, let's say, and to build, X number, or to have X percent body fat and X amount of muscle, lean muscle mass. And so number one is I want to digress for a moment and just remind people of this fact, okay? It's 2020 right now. 110 billion humans have walked on Earth. We've never, ever in the history of our species had more precise how-tos. We could put a freaking Mars rover on the planet and have it beam back information for us so that we can learn more about another planet, so far away from here. If we want to make more money, want to start a business, start a blog, lose weight, keep it off, double our income, be in a great relationship, have a greater spiritual connection, have more fun, be happier, eliminate X, Y, or Z. All the how-to, all the strategies and tactics are already here. You don't need to be the genius that figures it out. You need to be the genius that implements the strategies and tactics. But if you're not committed, then you're going to come up with excuses and be interested. So the first thing to understand is you don't have to be in the possession, okay, of the what I need to do when you make the decision to achieve a goal. But what you do have to do is say, I'm going to find out what the best strategy, tactic, and timelines are for me to achieve my goals based on what other experts or people have already done. That I'm going to get from somebody else if I don't know what to do. I'm going to become outstanding in discipline and execution, working the freaking plan every day, every week, every month. If I need to upgrade my knowledge, I will. If I need to upgrade my beliefs, I will. If I need to learn about how to let go of disempowering habits or addictions, I will. No matter what. And if you show up with that attitude, you can double, triple, quintuple your income. You could lose weight. You can build your business. You can build your gym. You can get into a great relationship. You can enhance the relationship that you have. Every outcome that you and I want, all the how-to already exists. So the problem isn't the how-to. The problem is that you are 100% disciplined to your current set of beliefs, 100% disciplined to your current emotional state or and then you're 100% disciplined to your current habits. So that means that your biggest challenge, my biggest challenge, is I have to master my mindset, master my emotions, and master my ability to do the things that'll yield the result that I want, because all the how-to is already here.
So how do you build discipline? How do you become someone that has rock solid discipline?
Same way you build a muscle. The exact same way that you build a muscle, a little bit at a time. So a lot of stuff that I teach my students is around awareness of self-talk, awareness around emotions, and awareness around behaviors, because that's what drives, our results, the ones we like, the ones we don't like. So let's say somebody wants to get in shape, okay, and they're out of shape. Can you commit to doing 1 minute a day for 100 days of something? Of course I can. Can you commit to one affirmation? Can you commit to one paragraph? Can you commit to one daily session of gratitude? Can you commit to one 10-minute session to upgrade your knowledge or skill around what it is that you want to improve? Can you do that? Well, of course you can. Now, are you committed to? Let's start with that. Let's reduce it to the ridiculous so that I see. First and foremost, I want to come back to what I said earlier. People who tell me I'm not disciplined are not accurate. Everybody's 100% disciplined to their current disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
So the key is I just need to switch some disciplines from, let's say, inactivity to some activity, right? From disempowering emotions to positive emotions, from behaviors that don't yield results to some behaviors that do. So I don't need to eat the whole elephant at once. All I need to do is to develop some confidence and certainty in my ability to change. In 2020, your ability to adapt and change will become one of the greatest skills that you can learn and reinforce. So your ability to change habits. Let me give you an example. Yesterday was the 365th day that I brushed my teeth with my left hand instead of my right hand.
Wow.
Now, people might go, why is that important? I said, well, one of the things that I want to master is my ability to change what I want to change. So what I have some of my students do, for example, is, hey, for the next 7 days, instead of brushing your teeth with your left or right hand, use the opposite hand just for 7 days. That's 14 times, hopefully, you'll brush your teeth. And the purpose of this is to notice the resistance. Notice the discomfort. Notice the self-talk wanting to go back to the other hand because it's uncomfortable. And then override your natural propensity to say, okay, I just tried it. Let me go to the other arm. Just notice all those things and do it for 7 days. Take your toilet paper, and if your toilet paper faces down, because you like to pull down, change it to pulling up. And I know that as I am even saying this, there are some people going, oh, no, I don't want to do it. That's uncomfortable. Do it anyway. You see how fast it works? No, it's not comfortable like that. I don't like it. It's not easy. It's not convenient. If you want to go a step further, wipe yourself with the opposite hand. Now,
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Right?
Yeah.
It might get messy, but the purpose is to be aware of how powerful your self-talk is, how powerful your rationalizations are, which means rational lies. You know, you want a little bit more? When you're in the shower, this is all bathroom stuff. Every day when you finish your shower, end for 15 to 30 seconds with an ultra cold shower. And if you don't want to do an ultra cold shower, do it halfway between hot or whatever you like it and ultra cold. And start training your brain to override your natural propensity to stay stuck in your comfort zones, to stay stuck doing the same old thing over and over and over and over again. And what's interesting, this morning, after a year goal that I had, you know, of brushing my teeth with my left hand, it's still uncomfortable. 730 brushes later, it's still uncomfortable. You know what I said this morning? Fuck it, I'm doing it for another year until it's comfortable, and then I might switch back. Now, the only reason I do this is because I own the most powerful biocomputer in the entire universe. And so do you. It's called your brain. It's an organism, okay, that most people don't understand. You have a brain, but you're not your brain. And your brain operates on a hierarchy of principles and a hierarchy of circuits that activate or deactivate. And if you're not in control of them, then by default, you're going to go back to your brain conserving energy and your brain keeping you safe. And so anytime you're uncomfortable, like when you want to change a goal or change a discipline or start one or discontinue one, it is mega uncomfortable initially until it becomes the new norm. And then the old is uncomfortable and the new is not. So I know you had mentioned that, you know, at 15 or so, you know, you stopped drinking alcohol. You know, I battled with alcohol into my 40s, and I have been sober for 10 years.
Congratulations.
Right. And so I understand the brain side of it, the neuroscience of it. But in order to change from what is to what is better, you need to have the tools to be uncomfortable long enough until the new becomes more powerful.
That's awesome. So these kind of micro goals that could seem arbitrary, brushing your teeth, wiping with another hand, pulling it up or down, etc. Those are flexing the muscle of being able to overcome discomfort in your brain. And that translates to less arbitrary things, more meaningful things.
Correct. The act of awareness of my thoughts, the act of awareness of my emotions and the sensations, the act of listening to the psychoses and the rationalizations of something as simple as brushing your teeth with the opposite hand and hearing the self-talk, of the excuses and the stories that don't want you to do that. Where else is that happening without your awareness? So what we want to do is make the non-conscious conscious. You asked earlier, how do I listen to the beliefs, that are in my subconscious mind? The same way you listen to the thoughts that percolate when you try to switch, behavior. The same way that you feel the emotions of this discomfort that cause you to go back into your old patterns that are comfortable and conserve energy. That's how you go from being aware to managing to mastering.
I love it. So you've been living and breathing this for 40 years now. Do you ever have ebbs and flows in your level of discipline? And if so, what do you do to get, when you get out of routine? How do you get back on?
Yeah, ebbs and flows. I'll share one with you right now. So I have one of the things I've been working on last year a lot was sugar. I just love at night after, not in the morning, not during the day. I'm vegan. I eat a meticulous diet. I'm in outstanding shape at 58 with, 12% body fat, 196 pounds. I was 238 pounds before with 30+% body fat. But regardless of that, I still at night, sometimes I like to have sugar. And the nature of my personality is like one cookie is too many and 10 is not enough, right? So the same thing I used to do with wine, I did with, cookies. Or, when we buy a carrot cake, we don't buy a piece of carrot cake. I'll eat half a carrot cake. So I go through, 2, 3, 4, 5 months of zero sugar, only to have a piece of or some sugar, and then I have sugar for 2, 3, 4 weeks. So at the beginning of this particular year, I said, okay, after these Christmas holidays where I ate way too much sugar after 7:30 every night and regained about, 4 pounds that I didn't need, even though I'm vegan and no alcohol, I went back onto a vegan keto diet to reset, and I haven't had sugar in the last 7 days. And so since it's early in the year, I take these daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly check-ins to see where am I, what's working, what isn't, then how do I reset. So I have certain go-to methodologies for me using my strengths, my way of doing things. And so checks and balances. I have rituals where I review my goals every day. I review my week every week. I review my month every month. I review my quarter every quarter in health, wealth, relationships, career, business, fun and experiences, charity, etc. And I say, okay, what's working, what's not? What do I need to shift and reset? And so I've got these consistent resetting processes that work for me. Now, I'm an extremist, right? So I am like, balls to the wall or nothing. There is no in between for me. My wife, on the other hand, if she has, let's say, too many sweets over the Christmas holidays, she can just back right off and have a little bit every week. I can't. I'm all or nothing. That's what addicts do. So we are all addicts. What most people don't understand is we are all addicts. Some of our addictions are constructive, some are destructive. So I have learned, for example, when I have too much sugar, I get more swollen, I get a little bit foggy brained, I don't have as much energy, my insulin spikes, my leptin levels go up. So I know all of the what happens, but as long as I've got check-ins on a regular basis, I could end a bad or destructive or disempowering pattern by resetting as quickly as I can.
So I have this business coach that talks a lot about what he calls drift. We set goals and then oftentimes we don't review those goals for another year. And so our ability to make constructive change is really diminished because we're not present to what really matters to us. And you talk over and over and over about memorizing goals and repeating them over and over. Can you talk about the importance of this?
Sure, it's part of my daily ritual. So I developed something called my Exceptional Life Blueprint that all of my students use, where we have our goals, but more than just having our goals, we have our rituals of what to do with them. So every single morning after I wake up, go to the bathroom, meditate, I review my goals in written form, I listen to some of them in auditory form, and I take a look at my plans for the day that'll help me achieve the goals that I want to achieve. So I'm consistently checking and balancing like a cybernetic mechanism does. You know, when you leave, in an airplane to go from wherever you live to another destination, there's a cybernetic mechanism in the airplane that checks and balances where the airplane is with all of the things that could go awry in flight, tailwinds, headwinds, turbulence, etc. And the plane is constantly checking, balancing, same as a guidance missile system. Well, I'm checking and balancing my own through a process of every day. I do that. Every hour on my mobile phone, I have a bell that goes off. As soon as that bell goes off, I take 6 deep breaths. It's one of the first Innercises I teach everybody. 6 deep breaths in through your nose, very slowly, out through your mouth, like you're breathing out through a straw. And then I just do a check and balance of the last hour. Am I on track or off track? Am I doing the high impact, high income things? Am I being productive or am I being busy? And it's a check and balance, check and balance, check and balance, check and balance, check and balance. So I'm never too far away from what I want to achieve.
That's great, man. So I want to be really respectful of your time. My last question is, my wife and I are expecting our first kid right now.
Nice. The best.
Yes. And so I'm curious, what of all of the research you've dove into about neuroscience from all of your experience, what's one or more of the most important lessons you've learned that has informed your parenting?
Oh my, there's nothing of this earth that I've enjoyed more or loved more than being a father and having 2 sons. So my son Keenan is 24, my son Noah's 22, and it's the best. There's a couple of things that have informed me. I'll give you 2 or 3 lessons. Number 1 is love is the killer app. So love is the killer app. Number 2 is we're a really freaking resilient species. And so for the most part, the universe has been around for, many billions of years, and it's operating in perfect order and harmony. And it's done so without yours or my involvement. So it will continue to for the most part. So trust the universal intelligence that's within you, but also in your unborn child, because the universal intelligence, the X and Y chromosomes that you and your wife gave this beautiful child, is doing its magic right now. The genius is already in play. So trust that genius that's in play. Number 2 is many years ago, I'll share one story with you that transformed my life as a parent. Is I was at a friend of mine's house, John Cofer, and he and his wife were divorced. I didn't have children at the time, and I went to pick up John on a Friday night to go out for dinner and some cocktails, and his babysitter wasn't there yet, so he asked me to watch his son John, while he went to shower. So I said, sure. And so John was bouncing from one sofa to the next, doing flips on the seat, off the seat, like freaking being rambunctious. And I was so frustrated. So when John came out, towel drying his hair, he said, hey, everything okay? I said, well, yeah, everything's okay, but your kid's like freaking, what did you give him, like a pound of sugar? He's bouncing around like a bean on the sofa, off the sofa, jumping down. And his kid was about 4 years old at the time. And he stopped and he looked at me and he says, hey, what do you think a 4-year-old's supposed to do? And I'm like, wow, I guess jump up and down on the sofa and have some fun. And so one of the greatest lessons that I got is be with your child at the stage that they're at.
That's great advice, man. Thank you so much.
So just be with them. When it's reading time, read with them. When it's playtime, play with them. When it's sleep time, be with that stage at that time. And everything else will pretty much work out.
That's great advice. John, you're the man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
Where can people find out all about your books and your courses and everything you've got going on?
Oh, great. So my newest book, Innercise, The New Science to Unlock Your Brain's Hidden Power, is at www.ignitemybrain.com. And for anybody who buys my book, I also created, I believe it's 8 brain training audios to help them with focus, with attention, with managing their emotions and stress. And so ignitemybrain.com. I'm on Instagram every day. I have a private Facebook group that I just started called Achieve Even More, where I do some training in there and give people some free access to my content. And then my company is NeuroGym, and the email or the website for that is myneurogym.com. And we do a lot of, really cool brain training events, and we give people a chance to dive deeper into our program. So find me on Facebook, on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, and in my Achieve Even More site online.
Well, thank you again, man. I know how busy of a guy you are, and so it means so much to me that you made time for this. And the level of care that you have for people just comes through so strongly. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Like you, I was blessed with somebody who cared more about me than I knew how to care about me when I was younger and needed it. And I promised him I would pay it forward.
Awesome, man. Have a great day.
You too, my friend.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Your journey towards better fitness continues. Head over to brutestrengthtraining.com to connect with Michael and his guests. Access links and resources mentioned in this episode, as well as bonus content exclusive to podcast listeners. That's brutestrengthtraining.com.